Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I could never do that," or "That's just not who I am"? Maybe you've hidden certain thoughts or feelings because they didn't match the person you believe yourself to be. If you're nodding along, you're not alone. Welcome to our exploration of one of psychology's most fascinating concepts. Before we dive deeper, if you find value in understanding the hidden aspects of your personality, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Your journey to self-discovery begins with small steps like these, and I promise, what you're about to learn might change how you see yourself forever. We humans are masters of self-deception. We create carefully curated versions of ourselves, polished, presentable, and perfectly acceptable to society. These versions become our masks, the faces we show to the world. But what happens to all those parts we deem unacceptable? Where do the anger, jealousy, selfishness, or even our wildest desires go when we decide they don't belong in our public image? According to Carl Jung, one of the 20th century's most influential psychologists, these rejected aspects don't simply disappear. Instead, they form what he called the shadow, a powerful, unconscious force within us containing everything we've denied about ourselves. This shadow doesn't just sit quietly in the dark corners of our mind. It influences our behavior, shapes our reactions, and sometimes, when we least expect it, makes itself known in surprising ways. Think about the times you've had an unexplained emotional outburst, or made a decision that left you wondering, why did I do that? These moments often reveal glimpses of our shadow breaking through the carefully constructed walls of our conscious self. Our shadow contains not just negative qualities, but also positive ones we're afraid to claim. Our creativity, our power, our brilliance that feels too bright to own. Most people live their entire lives afraid to fully be themselves. They construct an ideal image from carefully selected pieces of their experience, choosing only what seems good and acceptable. This selective self-creation might feel safer, but it comes at an enormous cost. By dividing ourselves this way, we become fragmented beings, living half-lives instead of experiencing the wholeness of our authentic selves. In his writings, Jung emphasized that unless we integrate our shadow into our conscious personality, we can never reach our fullest potential. Instead, we remain incomplete, fractured, partial, living lives filled with regret rather than the full, rich experience that awaits when we embrace all aspects of who we are. Let's consider an everyday example. Imagine someone who has convinced themselves they're a naturally talented writer. Perhaps they wrote a few well-received essays in school or received compliments on their emails at work. This person holds tight to this idealized self-image. I am a gifted writer. Then they're invited to join a writing workshop with published authors. At this crossroads, they face a choice that represents our universal struggle with the shadow. They can avoid the workshop, preserving their perfect self-image, but missing the opportunity for growth. Or they can attend, risking the discovery that their writing needs improvement, but opening the door to genuine development of their craft. This pattern repeats across our lives. We often prefer to remain in the realm of pure potential rather than test ourselves against reality. We comfort ourselves with thoughts like, I could be a great musician if I practiced, or I would be an amazing partner if I found the right person, without taking the steps to manifest these possibilities. We cherish the fantasy over the sometimes difficult truth. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, known for his hierarchy of needs and studies on self-actualization, observed that many people fear their own greatness as much as their inadequacies. He wrote, "We fear our highest possibilities. We are generally afraid to become that which we can glimpse in our most perfect moments.
This fear keeps us small, prevents us from embracing both our limitations and our extraordinary capacities. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, whose ideas influenced Jung, spoke of the importance of saying yes to life in its entirety. He believed that true strength comes not from denying reality, but from embracing it fully, both its beauty and its terror. When we acknowledge our shadow, we take the first step toward this complete affirmation of life. Our relationship with our shadow often begins in childhood. As psychologist and psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott noted, children learn which parts of themselves win approval and which bring disapproval. Gradually, they develop what he called a false self, a protective mask designed to earn love and acceptance. The more rigid our early environment, the more aspects of ourselves we may have needed to hide away. Consider the child told that big boys don't cry, or that nice girls don't get angry. These messages teach us to dissociate from natural emotions, pushing them into the shadow where they gain strength in darkness. Later in life, these repressed feelings don't simply vanish. They emerge in unexpected ways, sometimes through projection onto others. Projection is one of the shadow's most powerful mechanisms. When we can't acknowledge certain qualities in ourselves, we often see them everywhere in others. The person who can't admit their own manipulative tendencies becomes hypersensitive to manipulation around them. The individual who denies their own anger may constantly complain about how angry everyone else seems. Machiavelli, while not a psychologist but a keen observer of human nature, understood this principle when he wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see, to few to touch." We see in others what we refuse to touch within ourselves. The price we pay for rejecting our shadow is steep. Psychologist Robert Johnson described it as cashing in a 60-cent neurosis for a $6 psychosis. The energy required to keep parts of ourselves repressed drains our vitality. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It requires constant effort, and eventually, the ball will escape your grasp and shoot to the surface with unexpected force. What happens when we continue to deny our shadow? We develop what Jung called the persona, our social mask, at the expense of our authentic self. This persona becomes increasingly rigid as we age, leading to a sense of emptiness or inauthenticity that many experience in midlife. We may achieve external success while feeling internally disconnected, wondering why accomplishments don't bring the fulfillment we expected. Jordan Peterson, a contemporary psychologist who draws heavily on Jungian concepts, suggests that much of our suffering stems from this internal division. He notes that people who haven't integrated their shadow often experience a sense of meaninglessness despite outward achievements. They've climbed the ladder only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. The process of integrating the shadow, what Jung called shadow work, isn't about indulging every impulse or acting out repressed desires. Rather, it involves honest acknowledgement of our complete nature. It means recognizing, yes, under certain circumstances, I could be cruel, selfish, or deceitful, while also taking responsibility for these potentials rather than acting them out unconsciously. Erich Fromm, the humanistic philosopher and psychoanalyst, believed that this kind of self-awareness is essential for true freedom. He wrote, "Man's main task in life is to give birth to himself, to become what he potentially is. This birth requires acknowledging the totality of our being, not just the parts we're proud to display." Shadow work often begins with simple awareness. Notice when you have a strong emotional reaction to someone else's behavior. These triggers frequently point to disowned parts of yourself. If you find yourself intensely judgmental of others' selfishness, ask yourself where you might be denying your own needs or desires. If you're repelled by someone's vulnerability, consider what vulnerability you might be unwilling to acknowledge in yourself. The work continues through accepting these discoveries without judgment. This doesn't mean acting on every impulse, but rather understanding that having certain feelings or thoughts doesn't make you bad or unworthy. All humans contain multitudes, the light and the dark, the noble and the base. Our task is not to eliminate aspects of ourselves, but to bring them into conscious relationship with our values and choices. Marie-Louise von Franz, one of Jung's closest collaborators, observed that shadow integration often feels like a descent before it becomes an ascent. We must be willing to go down into the uncomfortable parts of ourselves before we can rise to greater wholeness. This descent might involve facing shame, guilt, or grief, emotions that can feel overwhelming, but ultimately lead to liberation. Let's return to our writer example. Imagine they choose to attend the workshop and discover they're not the natural talent they believed themselves to be. Initially, this realization feels like failure. Their ego suffers as they confront their limitations. But in accepting this reality, something remarkable happens. They gain the freedom to improve. They can now receive feedback, learn techniques, and develop authentic skill rather than clinging to an illusion. This pattern applies across all areas of life. The person who acknowledges their social anxiety, rather than pretending to be naturally outgoing, can learn genuine social skills. The partner who recognizes their jealousy, rather than insisting they're always secure, can develop true emotional maturity. The professional who admits their knowledge gaps, rather than feigning expertise, can grow into authentic mastery. Brené Brown, whose research focuses on vulnerability and shame, found that people who live what she calls wholehearted lives share a common trait. They embrace imperfection. They understand that vulnerability, showing up as our complete selves, shadows and all, is the path to connection, creativity, and meaning. As Brown puts it, vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. When we integrate our shadow, we gain access to energy that was previously spent on repression. Many people report feeling more alive, more creative, and more present after beginning shadow work. The parts of ourselves we feared would destroy us, if acknowledged, often become sources of strength and wisdom when brought into the light of consciousness. Carl Rogers, the founder of person-centered therapy, observed that the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. This acceptance doesn't mean resignation or giving up on growth. Rather, it creates the psychological safety necessary for true transformation. We can only change what we first acknowledge and accept. Jung himself believed that shadow integration was not just personal, but collective work. He saw that nations and cultures also repress aspects of their identity, projecting their collective shadow onto other groups with devastating consequences. The work of becoming whole individuals contributes to the healing of our divided societies. As we approach the end of our exploration, consider this. What parts of yourself have you been afraid to acknowledge? What would it mean to look at these aspects with compassion rather than judgment? The path to wholeness begins with a single step, the willingness to see yourself completely, without turning away from what you find. Remember that shadow work is not a destination, but a lifelong journey. It doesn't promise perfection, but something far more valuable: authenticity. In embracing our whole selves, we discover not just who we are, but who we can become. If this discussion has resonated with you, I invite you to take action today. Begin by simply noticing your judgments of others and asking what they might reveal about yourself. Journal about qualities you admire in others and those you strongly dislike. Both can point to your shadow. And of course, stay connected with our channel for more insights on your psychological journey. Like this video, share it with someone who might benefit, and join our community of fellow explorers on the path to authentic living. Remember, the parts of yourself you're most afraid to embrace might hold the key to the life you truly want to live.